It goes without saying, the Warriors have experienced plenty of success over the past decade, and between drafting Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, trading for Andrew Wiggins, the front office deserves a lot of credit, but not every outcome was a direct decision. In 2009, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected back-to-back point guards with Curry still on the board. Due to injuries early in his career, they were able to sign him to just a 4-year, $44 million extension, one of the best contracts in league history that played a pivotal role of them eventually being able to sign Kevin Durant. After he departed, they lucked out getting back D'Angelo Russell, coming off his first All-Star appearance, a player they would eventually be able to trade for Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. These events played a huge role in shaping the Warriors dynasty we've come to know, and were all greatly impacted by things out of their control. But today I want to talk about the 3 times they almost made the conscious decision to trade the face of their franchise, none other than Stephen Curry. The fact that he's still on the Warriors is actually insane. You're gonna see, these were very, very real scenarios. So let's get into this. The first time this happened was before Curry's NBA career even got started, and that was during the 2009 draft. Going into that draft, you either loved Curry as a prospect or you felt the exact opposite. You had teams like the Timberwolves, as we mentioned earlier, willing to draft Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn directly ahead of Curry. But then you had teams like the Phoenix Suns trying to aggressively trade up for him. Now what's so interesting about the Suns situation is who was orchestrating it. The Suns GM at the time was none other than Steve Kerr. Yes, the coach that would eventually lead Curry and the Warriors to 4 NBA titles. This isn't a situation where the Suns try to trade up for Curry and that's the end of it. The Suns fully believed they had a deal done. Looking back at this situation, Kerr said, "We tried to trade up and get Steph. We really went far down the road with the Warriors, and we thought we were going to get this done. We were going to make a deal, and this is going to be the guy to replace Steve Nash." The deal was contingent on Curry still being there at 7. When he was still there, we were under the impression that we had a deal, and unfortunately in the NBA, I'm sure in every sport, nothing's done until the trade call is made. Reportedly, this deal involved their star forward Amar'e Stoudemire and the 14th pick in the draft. Despite the trade not going down immediately on draft night, the Suns were still super confident it was going to go down, that at the 14th pick, they decided to draft Earl Clark instead of UCLA point guard Drew Holiday, who would go a few picks later to the Sixers. Now, we don't know exactly why the Warriors went back on this trade. Some rumors suggest it had to do with concerns about Amar'e Stoudemire's health. Concerns we would come to know were definitely warranted. What's so funny is what would happen after it became pretty clear the Suns weren't going to get Curry. Steph's father spoke about it on a podcast saying, "We had no idea they agreed to a trade. Obviously, they couldn't put that out." I remember Steve Kerr called me the next morning and saying, "Don't go to the press conference. We had a trade they went back on." I'm like, that's between you guys. We're going to go where they tell us. We can't not go. I think as NBA fans, we should be pretty grateful this trade didn't go through. The Warriors would have spent a few years trying to make something work with a Monte Ellis, Amar'e Stoudemire duo, then would have most likely had to rebuild from the bottom up. For Curry, it's hard to imagine he would have had close to the same team success given the Suns' struggles in the front office really up until the last 3 or so years. In fact, I'm not sure he would have lasted that long on the Suns, just given the situation they were coming into. The roster at the time was really old, with guys like Steve Nash, Channing Frye, and Grant Hill. Maybe they would have gone right into building around Curry, but we need to remember his injury struggles early. Honestly, I'm just glad this one didn't work out. Now, if you go back to 2009, I do have to say on paper, this trade made a fair amount of sense. A lot of people were split on Curry, even within the Warriors front office, especially with the presence of Monte Ellis, who at the time looked like a legitimate star. They were getting Amar'e Stoudemire, who was still just 27 years old, that if healthy, was one of the league's elite bigs, as well as going back to 7 picks in the draft. For the Suns, Steve Nash was now 35 years old. The championship window was closing. They were searching for their next franchise guard, and they thought Curry had a chance to be that guy. But even Steve Kerr said in retrospect that Curry wasn't some bulletproof prospect. They knew he came with a lot of risk. While today it's easy to laugh at this trade, if you really put yourself back in 2009, honestly, I'm kind of surprised it didn't go through. The next trade scenario would happen a couple years later, with Curry coming off his 2nd season in the league. Now this one's crazy to look at, as it involved another familiar face of the Warriors dynasty. This video is about Curry, but to hammer in the point that a lot went their way in order to create the group we know, Klay Thompson was almost moved a couple times. You probably heard of how he was almost dealt for Kevin Love before he was sent to Cleveland, but back in 2011, Curry and Klay Thompson were almost traded in the same deal. The crazier part, Bob Myers is the one that sent the offer. The deal was to acquire none other than Chris Paul. Now we need to remember the context. Curry was just a couple years into his career, Klay Thompson was their recent draft pick, while Chris Paul was the top point guard in the league that had teams scratching and clawing over him before he was eventually moved to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now trade talks didn't advance too far with the Warriors once they were informed that if they traded for Chris Paul, he had no plans on sticking around past his existing contract. Once that became the case, the Warriors obviously ended talks. What's really crazy is apparently New Orleans wasn't the only team to hear this trade package. According to ESPN beat reporter Ethan Strauss, the Warriors were blind lucky that they were unsuccessful in trading Steph and Klay for the stars they offered them together for. There were many people they tried to get and failed. Now, unlike the Suns scenario that I don't really think would have created an interesting what if, this one definitely does. Given this was in 2011, just a year prior to them landing the #1 overall pick Anthony Davis, I think there's a really solid chance if this would have happened, we would have seen a Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis big three all in their prime. Truly would have been something special. The last trade we have is definitely the one talked about the most, especially with the success the other team from this deal has had as of recently, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks. This trade almost went down a year after the trade we just mentioned in 2012. What's so fascinating about it is why Curry was eventually not involved. A trade still happened. The Warriors sent Monte Ellis, Kwame Brown, and Ekpe Udoh in exchange for Andrew Bogut and Steven Jackson. This trade made a lot of sense at the time. It became pretty clear that a Monte Ellis-Curry backcourt wasn't going to work, and with the success of their recent draft pick Klay Thompson, it seemed like the right time to trade for some more help in the front court. Andrew Bogut was a 27-year-old 7-foot center that was widely regarded as one of the best rim protectors in the league. He was coming off a year averaging 13 points, 11 rebounds, and a league-leading 2.6 blocks a game. On paper, it seemed like a fair trade, but when negotiations started, Monte Ellis was not the guy the Bucks were after. It was Stephen Curry. But eventually the Bucks leaned in the direction of Ellis due to concerns surrounding Curry's ankle injuries. So yes, those same ankle concerns that created one of the best contracts in league history also saved the Warriors from making a trade that would have easily gone down as one of the worst we've ever seen. Curry confirmed this in a recent interview, recalling the 2012 trade deadline, talking about how the team reacted to the trade going down, and the coaching staff pulling him to the side, letting him know he was almost moved. Now, the big question with this one that I'm sure you're all thinking right now is, would the Bucks still have gotten Giannis? I don't really think there's a reason to believe they wouldn't. In 2013, Monte Ellis averaged 19 points and 6 rebounds with the Bucks, and while yes, Curry would break out that year, going to 23 points and 7 assists, considering the supporting cast, I think the Bucks would have been in a pretty similar situation going into the draft. It would be in that same offseason they made the trade for Chris Middleton, so I truly believe if Curry's ankle injury was a little bit less concerning to the Bucks, we would have seen a Curry, Chris Middleton, and Giannis big three, something that, man, would have been a lot of fun to watch. But I don't think Curry would have the same accomplishments he does today. This team would have been on a much different timeline. Giannis didn't reach All-Star status till 2017 and Superstar status till the year following. By that time, Curry already had 2 rings with the Warriors, but nonetheless, this is a hell of a fun scenario to think about, and honestly, I can't think of a scarier duo than Giannis and Curry in their prime. This video really opened my eyes to the credit we give certain organizations for their roster building ability. While on paper, it looked like a masterclass by the Warriors, I've honestly come to the conclusion there was more luck involved than not. Let's be careful how much credit we give them. I could go down the rabbit hole of luck in the NBA and how it unfairly affects our perception of certain players and teams, but we're going to save that for another video. With all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great day, and peace.